Imagine holding a coin that is more than just a small piece of metal, but rather a silent witness to a nation's journey through time. A coin that carries with it the spirit of an era, the reflection of an economy and the pride of a people. The 50 Sentimo coin of 1972 from the Philippines is exactly that. A piece of circulating history that captures the shifting landscape of a country in a period of political transformation, economic struggle, and national identity. This coin is not merely a denomination. It is an emblem of what the Philippines stood for in the early 70s and why collectors, historians, and numismatists value it so highly. Today, the 50 Sentimo coin of 1972 was part of the Filipino series, which was introduced to replace the English series coins that had dominated since the American colonial period. The switch was more than cosmetic. It represented a cultural revival and a push for national identity through the Filipino language and symbols as the Philippines inched closer toward a new political direction under Ferdinand Marcos. The use of Filipino on currency became a subtle yet powerful symbol of independence and pride. The coin itself features on its obverse the profile of Marcelo H. del Pilar, one of the nation's greatest patriots, journalists, and revolutionaries, known for his writings in La Solidaridad, where he exposed abuses under Spanish rule. His face on the coin is not just an artistic rendering, but a reminder of the struggles fought for freedom and justice. On the reverse side, the national coat of arms is proudly displayed, representing sovereignty, resilience, and the Filipino spirit. Each detail, from the sunburst to the stars surrounding the shield, reflects the ideals that guided the republic. Minted in copper nickel, the 1972 50 Sentimo was modest in value, but significant in meaning. Its weight, its diameter, and its metallic composition were designed to align with practical circulation needs, while also ensuring durability. As the coin passed from hand to hand in markets, in schools, in jeepney fairs, and in countless everyday transactions for many Filipinos in the 70s, this coin was part of daily life. Yet as time passed, its historical value began to overshadow its practical worth. The year 1972 was also a critical one for the Philippines, as it marked the declaration of martial law by President Marcos. This political backdrop adds even more weight to the 50 Sentimo coin of that year, as it circulated in an atmosphere of control, censorship, and changing national dynamics. Every coin that exchanged hands during this time was part of a complex story where ordinary citizens faced extraordinary challenges. In many ways, coins like the 50 Sentimo became silent companions to the struggles of that generation. Collectors today prize the 1972 50 Sentimo, not just for its design but for its place in history. Numismatists often point to the cultural and political importance of this coin as a reflection of the Filipino series' goals to unify language, honor heroes, and strengthen national pride. Coins in higher grades, especially those preserved in mint state condition, command attention in auctions and private collections, and even circulated specimens are valued for their symbolic worth. The scarcity of pristine examples adds to their allure, since most coins were heavily used in everyday transactions by ordinary citizens. To truly appreciate this coin, one must also look at the life of Marcelo H. del Pilar. The man immortalized on its face, he was not just a reformist, but also a revolutionary thinker who believed in freedom of expression and equality. His writings ignited the flames of nationalism and inspired generations of Filipinos to dream of an independent nation. Placing his image on the 50 Sentimo coin in 1972 was more than a tribute. It was an intentional reminder of the need for vigilance, courage, and patriotism during uncertain times. As a numismatic artifact, the 1972 50 Sentimo provides insight into design trends, coinage policy, and the practical economic realities of the Philippines during the early 70s. It bridges the gap between utility and symbolism, between economics and culture, between past struggles and present appreciation. Its survival in collections around the world ensures that this small coin continues to tell a big story, one that spans heroes' revolutions, national identity, and the resilience of a people. The next time you hold or see a 1972 50 Sentimo coin, imagine the hands. It may have passed through the goods it may have purchased, the voices it may have heard in bustling marketplaces or quiet conversations, and the era it silently represents for a 2-hour exploration of its history. One could dive into the biography of Del Pilar, the detailed symbolism of the national coat of arms, the evolution of the Filipino coinage series, the socio-political climate of martial law, the production process of coins at the mint, the economic value of small denominations in daily Filipino life, and the journey of this coin from circulation to collector's item. Each angle reveals another layer of significance, making the 1972 50 Sentimo not just a coin, but a historical time capsule. When we look at the 50 Sentimo coin of 1972, we are not simply looking at a piece of change that once passed from pocket to pocket. We are looking at a symbol of the Philippines at a time of great transition, a time when the nation stood between its revolutionary past and its uncertain political present, and when the people themselves were seeking identity, strength, and resilience through even the smallest objects of daily life. The coin was minted in a composition of copper-nickel, chosen not only for its durability, but also for its suitability in everyday transactions. Its size and weight were deliberately crafted to make it distinct enough from lower denominations so that the public could easily identify it in the course of trade. The obverse design features Marcelo Hilario del Pilar, a towering figure in Philippine history. Del Pilar was born in 1850 in Bulacan and became one of the most influential reformists of the late Spanish colonial period. He wrote tirelessly against the abuses of Spanish friars and government officials, using satire, wit, and biting criticism. His most powerful works, published in La Solidaridad in Spain, made him a beacon for Filipino nationalists abroad and a voice for those oppressed. At home, by placing him on the obverse of the coin in 1972, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the designers of the Filipino series were not simply honoring a man, they were declaring to the nation that the struggle for reform and independence must never be forgotten. Every time a citizen looked at the coin, they were reminded of Del Pilar's courage, his sacrifice, and his enduring call for freedom. The reverse of the coin carries the coat of arms of the Republic of the Philippines. This was not simply an artistic flourish. It was the physical embodiment of the state. The shield itself contains symbols of the country's identity. The 3 stars representing Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The sun representing liberty, unity, and democracy. The American eagle and the lion of Castile, recalling the nation's colonial history under both Spain and the United States, and the scroll proudly displaying the words Republika ng Pilipinas. All these symbols together reflected a country forged by history, but striving to move forward under its own sovereign path. The inclusion of the coat of arms on currency reinforced a message of national pride and unity. This is the story of the 1984 50 Sentimo coin from the Philippines, a piece of currency that may appear small in value, but carries a very large weight in history and heritage. The 50 Sentimo coin issued in 1984 was part of the Flora and Fauna series of coins that was released during the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos. This series was introduced in the early 1980s as part of a national effort to redesign and modernize Philippine coinage in order to represent not just leaders and statesmen, but also to showcase the natural beauty and biodiversity of the nation in the 50 Sentimo coin. The chosen symbol was the Philippine orchid, a flower of delicate beauty that represents resilience and national pride. The coin was struck in copper-nickel, giving it durability and a silvery appearance that stood out among the other minor denominations. At the time, the obverse side of the coin carried the denomination 50 Sentimo, along with the year of minting, which in this case was 1984. Surrounding this were engravings that reflected the official seal of the Central Bank of the Philippines, which at the time was the main authority in issuing national coinage, while the reverse side showcased the orchid design in fine detail. The release of this coin came at a time when the Philippines was undergoing serious political and economic struggles, inflation was rising, the peso was losing value, and yet the government still wanted to emphasize culture and nature as part of national identity. By featuring the orchid, the 50 Sentimo coin became not just a medium of exchange, but also a small circulating ambassador of Filipino natural heritage collectors. Today view the 1984 50 Sentimo coin as a bridge between two important eras in Philippine numismatics, the old designs featuring political figures and the newer designs celebrating flora and fauna. The coin measured around 24 millimeters in diameter and weighed approximately 4 grams, making it light and easy to carry, but also easy to lose in daily circulation, because its value was small. Even in the mid-1980s, at that time, 50 Sentimo was only half a peso and could buy a stick of candy or a small portion of rice. But as inflation worsened, the value quickly eroded, and by the late 1980s, the coin was hardly seen in active use and began to vanish from pockets and markets. The minting process for the 1984 series was carried out in large quantities, but because these coins were not heavily collected at the time, many ended up worn, corroded, or lost forever. Those that survive today in good condition tell us about the quality of Philippine minting technology during that period. The intricate detail of the orchid shows the skill of the engravers, while the durability of the copper-nickel alloy reveals the scientific planning that went into making coins meant to endure years of circulation for the people who lived through the 1980s. The coin brings back memories of an era filled with hardship, martial law, lingering economic crises, and the eventual people power revolution of 1986, which marked the fall of the Marcos regime. Even though the 50 Sentimo coin was not political in its imagery, it still carries the invisible imprint of the time period. It belonged to, it circulated in the hands of jeepney drivers, market vendors, school children, and office workers. It was part of the everyday transactions of a nation under tension and transition. 4. Numismatists, or coin collectors around the world. The 1984 50 Sentimo coin has now become a minor treasure, not because of its metallic value, which is small, but because of its historical and cultural symbolism. Some rare specimens can still be found in uncirculated condition showing bright luster and clear details. These are the pieces most sought after by serious collectors. They represent not just money, but a slice of national narrative sealed in metal. The life of this coin tells us about how money is more than currency. It is identity art and record of human society. Today, when we hold a 1984 50 Sentimo coin, we hold a window into the Philippines. Of 40 years ago, we see a government trying to emphasize beauty amid crisis. We see a nation struggling with inflation, yet still producing currency that celebrated orchids. We see a society that handled this coin daily, not thinking of its future rarity. And now, decades later, collectors, museums, and historians look at it. With interest and respect, the 50 Sentimo coin is therefore not just a relic, but a conversation piece linking the story of money with the story of a country. If we expand our view and compare it to other coins of the same flora and fauna series, we see how each denomination told a different story of nature and culture. The 1 Sentimo showed the Mosaenda philippica flower. The 5 Sentimo showed a starfish. The 10 Sentimo featured the hammerhead shark. And as we climb up the denominations, we meet more flora and fauna unique to the Philippines, but the 50 Sentimo stood in the middle of the series, modest in value but rich in symbolism, and as the economic struggles of the 80s wiped away the spending power of small coins, it faded from circulation quicker than many others. This makes the surviving 1984 issue a coin that today is harder to spot in everyday life, but easier to appreciate in historical study. When you create a 2-hour discussion around this coin, you can explore not only the technical details of weight, diameter, composition, engraver, and issue, but also the wider historical context. The coin becomes a portal to talk about 1980s Philippine politics, global economic pressures, the everyday life of Filipino families, and the eventual shift in national symbols after the downfall of Marcos and the rise of new democratic leadership coins like the 1984 50 Sentimo show us that even the smallest denomination can hold the largest stories each scratch. Each worn edge, each faded number, is a mark of the journey of a people and a nation. The 1984 50 Sentimo coin carries within it the layered story of the Philippines at a turning point in its history. And to truly understand the full narrative, we have to go back and trace the origins of Philippine coinage and the role money has played in shaping the identity of the nation when the Spanish ruled the archipelago for more than 300 years. The first coins to circulate in the islands were Spanish reals and Mexican pesos. These coins were often cut into smaller pieces called cobs or makukinas, and used in trade. The people became familiar with silver and copper as the common metals of daily life. During the American period, the United States established the Manila Mint and began striking coins that bore both the symbol of the United States and the word Filipinas. Those coins carried the designs of a young woman standing before a hammer and anvil representing industry, with a volcano in the background representing natural beauty. When independence was finally granted in 1946, the Philippines began designing its own coinage series that reflected national heroes, presidents, and symbols of sovereignty. By the time the 1970s and 1980s arrived, the Marcos administration sought to create a new image for the Philippines through its money. The Flora and Fauna series was introduced in 1983 and ran until the early 1990s. This was a major shift from earlier coins, which mostly portrayed political leaders. The Flora and Fauna series instead highlighted the natural richness of the archipelago. This served two purposes. First, it avoided political controversy by focusing on neutral subjects like plants and animals. And second, it promoted national pride in the environment. The 50 Sentimo coin of 1984 fits squarely into this campaign by showcasing an orchid. The orchid family is among the largest groups of flowering plants in the world, and the Philippines has hundreds of native orchid species, some of which are unique only to the islands. The choice of an orchid for the 50 Sentimo was deliberate. It symbolized beauty, resilience, and rarity. The coin itself was minted in copper-nickel alloy, measuring about 24 millimeters in diameter and weighing approximately 4 grams. On the obverse side, you would find the words Republika ng Pilipinas, meaning Republic of the Philippines, along with the denomination 50 Sentimo and the year 1984. The reverse side featured the orchid design in a detailed engraving that gave the coin a refined look for a low-denomination coin. It was fairly well crafted. The rim was smooth, unlike higher denomination coins that sometimes had reeded edges. This simplicity reflected both cost-saving and functional design because small coins were meant to circulate quickly and widely without much attention. But when we look at circulation, we realize that the 1984 50 Sentimo coin had a very short life. In everyday transactions, inflation during the 1980s was so severe that the peso lost a significant portion of its value. 50 Sentimo was already small in worth, and by the late 1980s it could barely purchase a single piece of candy or a few grams of rice. Many Filipinos considered it inconvenient, and soon it was left unused in drawers, jars, and savings boxes. Children played with them, and shopkeepers often refused them. Eventually, banks stopped handling them actively, and they disappeared from circulation. While millions were minted, only a fraction survived in good condition because people did not see value in keeping them. From a collector's perspective, this coin represents a fascinating study because it is both common and uncommon. At the same time, common in the sense that many were minted, uncommon in the sense that few survived in pristine, uncirculated condition. When a coin is used daily, it suffers scratches, dents, corrosion, and loss of luster, and that is what happened. With most 1984 50 Sentimo pieces, they were exposed to the tropical climate of the Philippines, with humidity, salt air, and heavy use wearing them down, so now collectors search for coins. Have you ever held a coin so ordinary that it slips through the hands of millions every single day? Yet inside its copper and nickel body, it carries with it the story of a nation, the struggles of an economy, and the cultural pride of a people. This is the tale of the 1985 50 Sentimo coin of the Philippines, a coin that may seem small in value but stands as a witness to an era of transformation, political turbulence, and national identity. The 1985 50 Sentimo coin of the Philippines belongs to the second currency series introduced under the Central Bank of the Philippines, known as the Flora and Fauna series, which ran from 1983 to 1993. This coin was minted during a critical time in Philippine history when the country was facing both economic hardship and political unrest under the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos. The 50 Sentimo coin was designed not only as legal tender, but also as a cultural token meant to educate Filipinos about the nation's biodiversity and heritage. The coin is composed of copper and nickel with a standard round shape and a reeded edge. Its diameter is 24 millimeters and its weight is approximately 5 grams, giving it a sturdy feel for daily transactions on the obverse side of the coin. We see the portrait of Marcelo H. del Pilar, one of the most important propagandists of the Philippine Revolution against Spanish rule. Del Pilar was a writer and journalist who used his pen to awaken the consciousness of Filipinos. Against colonial oppression, his inclusion on the 50 Sentimo coin symbolizes the value of thought and ideas in shaping national identity. Above his portrait is the inscription Republika ng Pilipinas, written in bold lettering affirming sovereignty, and pride below his image is his full name, Marcelo H. del Pilar, along with the mint year of 1985, which grounds the coin firmly in its historical context. The reverse side features the Philippine flora design, which was the key theme of this entire series. The 50 Sentimo coin specifically highlights the wailing orchid known as Vanda sanderiana. This flower has been celebrated as one of the most beautiful orchids in the world, and it has been recognized as a symbol of Philippine natural wealth by placing this orchid on the coin. The central bank aimed to remind every Filipino that the nation's natural treasures were as valuable as its history, and heroes around the orchid design is the denomination written as 50 Sentimo, along with the name Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, which at that time was still functioning under its older charter as central bank. The release of this coin in 1985 came during a period of rising inflation in the Philippines, where the value of small denominations such as the 50 Sentimo was still significant for public transportation, street food purchases, and daily essentials for working-class Filipinos. The coin passed through countless hands in jeepneys, sari-sari stores, and wet markets. Its circulation became part of the rhythm of ordinary life. Yet at the same time, the coin carried a deeper symbolic weight because of its cultural and historical imagery. When analyzing the political context of 1985, we understand why this coin matters. Even more, the late years of the Marcos regime were marked by economic decline, mounting foreign debt, and growing civil unrest. The Flora and Fauna series was partly designed to distract from the turbulence by promoting national pride through imagery. Of heroes and natural wonders, the 50 Sentimo coin was minted at the height of this strategy, becoming both a practical tool for commerce and a subtle instrument of cultural reinforcement. The year 1985 was also just 1 year before the Power Revolution of 1986, which would topple Marcos and begin a new chapter of Philippine democracy. In that light, the 50 Sentimo coin of 1985 stands as a silent witness to a pivotal turning point in Philippine history. From a numismatic perspective, collectors view the 50 Sentimo coin of 1985 as a mid-tier collectible. It is not considered extremely rare because millions of these coins were struck for circulation, yet the condition of surviving coins determines their value uncirculated. Pieces with original luster-sharp details and minimal contact marks can fetch more attention among hobbyists, while circulated examples remain common and affordable. Nevertheless, the historical context of this coin adds a layer of significance, beyond its face value and beyond its metallic worth, making it a fascinating subject for collectors, historians, and ordinary Filipinos who still remember using it in daily life. The 50 centimo denomination itself is an interesting reflection of the Philippine monetary system under the peso, which is divided into 100 centimo in the mid-1980s. A peso could still purchase basic items and 50 centimo held practical weight. Today, the denomination has been almost completely phased out in practical circulation as inflation over the decades has rendered it nearly obsolete. But looking back at the 1985 issue, we see how important it was at the time as a bridge between the smaller coins of 10 or 25 centimo and the larger coins of 1 peso. The legacy of Marcelo H. del Pilar on the coin deserves emphasis. He was born in 1850 and dedicated his life to reform and enlightenment in the Philippines. Through his writings in publications like La Solidaridad, he became one of the intellectual pillars of the propaganda movement. His role in Philippine history is often overshadowed by figures like José Rizal, but Del Pilar's fearless fight for justice made him a powerful symbol of patriotism. His presence on the 50 centimo coin is a reminder that freedom is not only fought with swords, but also with words, ideas, and courage in the face of oppression. The choice of the wailing orchid on the reverse also reflects the Philippine connection to global biodiversity. This orchid is native to Mindanao and is often called the Queen of Philippine Flowers. It is valued for its large, showy blossoms and has become a prized plant among horticulturists worldwide. Featuring it on a coin in 1985 placed it into the everyday consciousness of millions of Filipinos who may never have seen the flower in person, but would carry its image in their pockets through the simple act of using money. The coin thus served an educational purpose, linking the citizen to both cultural heritage and natural heritage in a single design. In terms of design and artistry, the 50 centimo coin of 1985 follows the broader visual style of the Flora and Fauna series, which emphasized clean portraits, national pride, and realistic renderings of plant life compared to earlier series, such as the Filipino series of 1975, which featured stylized national heroes. The Flora and Fauna series adopted a more modern aesthetic, aligning with international numismatic standards. Of the time, the minting process itself employed modern coinage technology, ensuring consistency in weight and dimensions. The 50 centimo coin also offers a story of transition in Philippine coinage history. After 1993, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas was rechartered and a new coin series was introduced, gradually phasing out the Flora and Fauna series coins by the late 1990s and early 2000s. The 50 centimo coin with the wailing orchid had largely disappeared from circulation, and younger generations grew up unfamiliar with it. Yet for those who lived through the 1980s and early 1990s, the coin remains a nostalgic reminder of their childhood allowance, their trips to the store, and the texture of Philippine money in that era. Numismatists often reflect on how coins are tiny historical documents, and the 1985 50 centimo is no exception. It encapsulates the political climate, the cultural priorities, the economic struggles, and the artistic expressions of its time in one small round object. Every scratch and every worn edge tells a story of lives lived, of trades made, of journeys taken across the archipelago. Today, collectors and historians revisit this coin, not only to assess its market value, but to rediscover the meanings hidden in its design, to study its context in Philippine society, and to preserve it as a tangible piece of history. While its purchasing power has vanished, its cultural and historical weight remains solid as ever. And so the 50 Sentimo coin of 1985 continues to live on as a symbol of the Philippine struggle, resilience, and pride. Have you ever held a coin in your hand and wondered if it could tell you the story of an entire nation, if it could whisper the secrets of the past, speak of the struggles of the people, and reveal the power of leaders who once ruled the land? The 1984 50 Sentimo coin from the Philippines may look small and ordinary to the casual eye, but behind its golden nickel-brass surface lies a story of revolution, of economic crisis, of propaganda, and of national pride. This coin carries the face of Marcelo H. del Pilar, a fearless reformist and journalist who once fought with words instead of weapons against colonial oppression, and his image was chosen not by accident, but as part of a much larger narrative crafted during the final years of Ferdinand Marcos and his controversial New Society program. This is more than just a coin. It is a mirror of history. It is a witness to the rise and fall of power. It is a reminder of how even the smallest denominations can speak of the greatest struggles, and it is a forgotten key to understanding the Philippines in the 1980s. The year was 1984, and the Philippines was in the midst of significant political and economic transformation, and at the same time, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas issued a new line of coins under the Ang Bagong Lipunan or New Society series, which had begun in 1975 as part of President Ferdinand Marcos's program of national identity and modernization. Within this series, the 50 Sentimo coin stood out not only because of its denomination, but also because of its symbolic imagery, material composition, and the time of its release when inflation, economic turbulence, and social changes were defining the lives of everyday Filipinos. The 50 Sentimo coin of 1984 was minted in nickel brass, a composition chosen for its durability, affordability, and golden appearance. The coin was round with a diameter of about 24 millimeters and a weight that made it easy to handle in everyday transactions. The obverse featured a portrait of Marcelo H. del Pilar, a Filipino writer, lawyer, and journalist who became one of the most important figures of the Philippine propaganda movement in Spain during the late 1800s. Del Pilar was widely regarded as a defender of press freedom and social reform. His selection on the coin carried political and cultural significance at a time when the Marcos administration sought to emphasize patriotism and the valor of national heroes on the reverse side of the coin. The design included the official seal of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, along with the denomination written as 50 Sentimo, and the year 1984, the inclusion of the BSP seal not only signified the authority of the issuing body, but also reinforced trust and legitimacy in Philippine currency during an era when trust in government institutions was under strain due to rising economic pressures. The 1984 50 Sentimo coin circulated as part of daily commerce in local markets, sari-sari stores, and public transportation fares. It was commonly used in small transactions for candies, cigarettes, jeepney fares, and other low-cost goods and services. Yet the coin also reflected deeper economic realities. The early 1980s were marked by a debt crisis and by the sharp depreciation of the Philippine peso against the U.S. dollar. Inflation eroded the value of small denominations, and while the 50 Sentimo coin still carried purchasing power in 1984, within a few years, its ability to buy everyday items declined rapidly, making it less visible in circulation. By the late 1980s, the production of the 1984 50 Sentimo coin was overseen by the Philippine Mint, also known as the security printing plant of the Bangko Sentral in Quezon City, while some coins from the series were also contracted to be struck abroad, depending on the demand and the minting capacity. At the time, the minting process involved preparing nickel brass blanks, cutting them to precise dimensions, striking them with engraved dies under intense pressure, and carefully inspecting them for consistency in detail before release into circulation. The historical significance of this coin lies not only in its physical attributes, but also in its role as a reflection of society, Portrait of Marcelo H. del Pilar invited citizens to remember the fight for reform during Spanish colonial times, while the contemporary use of the coin reminded Filipinos of their struggle with inflation, currency devaluation, and political transition. The New Society series itself was part of Marcos's effort to instill a new order by redesigning national symbols and emphasizing discipline, identity, and unity. Coins were one of the most visible expressions of this effort because they passed through millions of hands every day. Collectors today view the 1984 50 Sentimo coin with great interest, not because of its monetary value, but because of its historical context. While the coin in circulated condition is common, its uncirculated and proof versions are prized by numismatists as reminders of a turbulent era in Philippine history. The design has also become a subject of discussion among historians, economists, and collectors because it bridges the late years of the Marcos regime and the shifting tides that would culminate in the People Power Revolution of 1986. The legacy of the 1984 50 Sentimo coin, therefore, is layered. On one hand, it was a small denomination coin that many people might have overlooked at the time. Yet, on the other hand, it now serves as a piece of tangible history, encapsulating the cultural symbolism, economic challenges, and political climate of the Philippines during the mid-1980s. In studying this coin, we are not just looking at metal and design, but at the deeper story of a nation navigating change and identity. Today, when one holds a 1984 50 Sentimo coin, the shine of its nickel brass may have faded, but its story remains alive. It tells us about the aspirations of leaders, the struggles of ordinary citizens, and the resilience of a nation. Its value now lies not in what it can buy, but in what it represents: a silent witness to the unfolding of Philippine history during one of its most defining decades. In the year 1984, the Philippines was entering one of the most difficult chapters of its modern history, a chapter marked by financial instability, political turbulence, and a growing call for change across the islands. And yet, even in the smallest details of everyday life in the jingling of coins in the pockets of jeepney drivers, in the hands of market vendors, and in the change passed to children buying candies, there was a quiet reflection of that larger national story. The 50 Sentimo coin, minted in 1984, may appear like a simple piece of currency, but when studied closely, it becomes a living witness to the cultural struggles and political forces of that era. The coin was part of the Ang Bagong Lipunan series, literally meaning the New Society, a coinage program. Initiated under President Ferdinand Marcos in the mid-1970s, this program was designed not just to replace old coinage, but to embody the ideals of a new order, a rebranding of the nation, and a daily reminder of the government's vision. The selection of heroes, the national emblems, and the very look of the currency were all meant to reinforce an image of unity, discipline, and nationalism. The 50 Sentimo piece took its place within this ambitious scheme, but its timing in 1984 gave it layers of meaning far beyond its modest denomination. The obverse of the coin displayed the proud likeness of Marcelo H. del Pilar, a man remembered as one of the fathers of Philippine journalism. Del Pilar, known by his pen name Plaridel, used his sharp words and revolutionary spirit to fight against the abuses of the Spanish clergy and to inspire Filipinos to demand reforms in the late 19th century. His writings in the newspaper La Solidaridad gave a voice to the voiceless and challenged colonial power structures. His choice as the face of the 50 Sentimo coin was a message in itself. It was as if the government was saying that the ideals of courage, intellect, and reform were part of the identity of the nation, and yet the political climate of 1984 created an irony where the government that sought to honor him was itself under intense criticism for curbing freedoms. The reverse side of the coin carried the official seal of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the central banking authority of the country, surrounded by the words Republika ng Pilipinas, and the denomination 50 Sentimo, along with the year 1984. This combination of symbols and text was the guarantee of authenticity, the legal authority that turned a piece of metal into an instrument of commerce. But more than that, the design itself spoke of the official stamp of government power, the promise that the nation would stand behind its money. The coin was composed of nickel brass, a golden-hued alloy that gave it a respectable appearance while being cost-effective and durable. Its diameter was roughly 24 millimeters, making it small enough for easy handling but distinct in size from smaller denominations, so that even without sight, Filipinos could often distinguish it by touch. It had a plain edge unlike the reeded edges of higher-value coins, and this plainness made it simpler to produce while still serving its purpose in circulation. These design decisions were not arbitrary. They reflected a careful balance between aesthetics, national symbolism, cost of production, and the needs of everyday users. This is not just a 50-centavo coin. This is a forgotten piece of Philippine history that tells a story of politics, of national heroes, of changing economies, and of a nation rebuilding itself in 1986 after a revolution. Today, we will uncover the secrets behind the 1986 50-centimo coin and why it deserves more than just a passing glance in your pocket change. The year was 1986, and the Philippines was standing at a turning point in its modern history, the end of an authoritarian rule, and the beginning of a restored democracy. The coinage issued during this time reflected not only the economic realities of the country, but also the new direction of national identity. Among these pieces of money that carried both economic and symbolic weight was the 50-centimo coin of 1986. This coin belonged to the Flora and Fauna series introduced by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas during the mid-1980s and carried forward in later years. The Flora and Fauna series was intended to celebrate the rich natural heritage of the Philippines, showing plants and animals native to the islands on everyday coins. This design philosophy was a way of making ordinary Filipinos proud of their biodiversity and of reminding every citizen who held a coin in hand that their environment was something of value. The 50-centimo coin in 1986 depicted Melchora Aquino on one side. She was known as the mother of the Philippine Revolution, a figure deeply connected to the fight for freedom in the late 19th century during the struggle against Spanish colonization. Her image on this coin at this particular moment in history was more than symbolic. It was a reminder that the spirit of revolution and the pursuit of liberty were part of the national DNA, and that in 1986 the people had once again overthrown tyranny through the EDSA People Power Revolution. The reverse of the coin displayed the wailing an orchid, considered one of the most beautiful flowers in the Philippines, known scientifically as Vanda sanderiana. This flower represented the exotic and delicate natural beauty of the country. Combining Melchora Aquino with the wailing on the two sides of the coin reflected the spirit of resilience, beauty, and endurance. The coin was made of copper nickel, with a diameter of 24 millimeters and a weight of 4 grams. The edges were reeded and the finish was plain and functional, but what made it stand out was the cultural depth contained. In such a small piece of metal, to fully appreciate this coin, one must understand the historical moment of 1986. It was the year of transition. The economy was fragile, inflation was high, and confidence in the peso had been shaken by years of political turmoil. The issuance of coins like the 50-centimo was not only an economic necessity, but also a way for the government to assert stability. A coin carries authority because it is issued by the state, and in 1986 the state itself had just been redefined, with Corazon Aquino becoming the first female president of the Philippines after the ousting of Ferdinand Marcos. So this small coin became part of the new era. It was minted in large quantities for circulation, but unlike ordinary money, it spoke volumes about identity and memory collectors. Today, value the 1986 50-centimo coin not because it is rare, but because it marks the start of a new period in Philippine numismatics. The Flora and Fauna series ran from 1983 until the early 90s, and it was later replaced by the BSP coin series in 1995. What sets the 1986 issue apart is the timing. It represents that fragile year when democracy was restored and when the country was reintroducing itself to the world. The fact that Melchora Aquino was chosen instead of another political figure is striking. It avoided divisive politics and instead united Filipinos by honoring a hero of the past whose struggle embodied patriotism, sacrifice, and care for her people. If we break down the artistic details of the coin, we see that the obverse features a well-crafted bust of Melchora Aquino facing left, with her name clearly inscribed around the rim. The inscription also includes the value 50 Sentimo, along with the year 1986. The reverse features the national flower design with the name Waling Waling inscribed in stylized lettering and the Republika ng Pilipinas circling the edge. The design is clean, functional, and elegant at the same time. It was meant for mass use, yet it carried artistic pride that elevated the coin beyond mere change over time. This coin circulated widely in markets, jeepneys, sari, stores, and households. It bought small goods, candies, bus rides, and other daily necessities. For ordinary Filipinos in the mid to late 1980s, this coin was part of everyday life, which makes it historically valuable not because of scarcity, but because of the memories attached to it. This was the coin in the hands of a child buying bread in a neighborhood bakery or a student paying part of a jeepney fare. It was money alive in the economic bloodstream of the post-revolutionary Philippines. For coin collectors and historians examining the 50 Sentimo coin of 1986 also opens discussions about metallurgy, minting practices, and coin distribution in the Philippines during the period. It was struck by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas with technical precision despite the country facing budgetary and political challenges. The decision to continue minting coins with the flora and fauna design showed consistency and the desire to promote national symbols that transcended politics. In modern times, the 50 Sentimo coin of 1986 has become a collectible item not for its monetary worth, which is small, but for its historical resonance. Many collectors seek it out as part of the complete flora and fauna set. Others preserve it in albums and display cases as part of Philippine history. Its value on the numismatic market may not be high, but its value in telling the story of a nation is priceless. When we hold this coin, we are holding the voice of a generation that witnessed both turmoil and triumph. If one were to make a 2-hour documentary about this coin, the narrative would begin with the political upheavals of the 1980s, then move to the symbolism of Melchora Aquino and her role in history, then to the botanical significance of the wailing orchid, then to the technicalities of minting and metallurgy, then to the coin's journey through the economy, and finally to its legacy. Today, each of these chapters could take 20 minutes, and each would deepen our understanding of why this coin deserves our attention. So in summary, the 50 Sentimo coin of 1986 is not just a small round object of copper-nickel. It is a historical marker, a tribute to Melchora Aquino, a celebration of Philippine natural heritage, and a witness to the rebirth of democracy. It embodies the memory of an era when the Filipino people reclaimed their freedom and when the smallest coin in the pocket carried the largest story of them all. Let us take a closer look at the woman honored on the face of the 50 Sentimo coin of 1986. Melchora Aquino was born in 1812 in Quezon City, which was then part of the Spanish colony of the Philippines. She was a widowed mother of 6 when she became involved in the early stages of the revolution against Spanish rule. Known by her nickname, Tandang Sora, she was already 71 years old when she began to support the Katipunan, a secret society that sought independence from Spain. She offered her home as a refuge for sick and wounded revolutionaries. She provided food and shelter. She used her modest resources to sustain those who were fighting, and she gave moral encouragement to younger leaders. Her age and her motherly role earned her the title Mother of the Revolution, but it was not only a symbolic name. It was the reality that she nurtured and sustained a movement that later grew into a full-scale struggle for freedom. The Spanish authorities eventually discovered her activities, and she was arrested and exiled to Guam for several years. After Spain lost control of the Philippines, she was able to return home, and she lived quietly until her death in 1919. Her life was a story of courage, sacrifice, and patriotism. She was not a general or a soldier, but her contribution was indispensable by placing her on the 50 Sentimo coin. In 1986, the newly re-established democracy of the Philippines was reminding its people that real strength lies not only in weapons, but in compassion, unity, and persistence. This message resonated deeply in 1986 because that was the very year when the Filipino people, through peaceful means and through courage, stood up against an oppressive government during the EDSA People Power Revolution. Now let us turn to the reverse side of the coin, the orchid known as the wailing or Vanda sanderiana. This orchid is native to Mindanao and is considered one of the rarest and most beautiful flowers in the world. It is prized by horticulturists and botanists for its size, color, and elegance. The wailing has been called the Queen of Philippine orchids. Its inclusion in the coinage was not accidental, but intentional. It was a reminder that the Philippines is blessed with biodiversity that is unique and valuable to the world. It was also a subtle way of connecting the natural beauty of the nation with its cultural identity. As a symbol, it represented resilience, delicacy, and prestige qualities that reflected how the country saw itself at a time of rebirth. When you hold the 50 Sentimo coin of 1986, you are not simply holding metal. You are holding a bridge between two stories, one of a woman who embodied the struggle for freedom and one of a flower that embodied the richness of the land. Together, they told the story of a nation that is both human and natural, both strong and delicate, both revolutionary and nurturing.